but you are Jim Banks, and we're glad to have you.
Good to be with you, Kurt.
Well, look, let's get right into it. You're a naval officer. You've got to be looking at what's happening in the asymmetrical Ukrainian attack in Russia with at least a level of concern. How do you feel about it?
Well, President Trump campaigned on ending the war, and we need to be backing him up. We need to be supporting the president's efforts to bring both sides together, come to a peace deal, and stop the loss of life, stop the loss of resources, and make sure that America doesn't get drawn further into it. So what we're seeing right now, Kurt, is the opposite. We're seeing escalation. We're seeing this play out in a way that it's hard to see how either side can come to terms and come to the table to end the war when it continues to escalate. So that's what concerns me. President Trump is serious about brokering a peace deal. He's been tough on both sides. Those who think that President Trump is soft on Russia, it's just not true. He's been as tough on Putin as he's been on Zelensky, pushing both of them to come to the table. But the latest acts are concerning to me because it's hard for me to imagine that this is going to come to an end anytime soon.
Yeah, it is. Senator Banks, do you feel that this could get out of control, that Putin could miscalculate, it could escalate and somehow involve the United States, perhaps even in a nuclear exchange? And I mean, I don't want to sound paranoid, but we're playing with fire here when you're talking destroying one of the legs of the Russian triad.
Yeah, absolutely. It is my biggest concern. It's always been my concern. Thank God the commander-in-chief is Donald Trump and not Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, because if that were the case, I think, that you would see Putin react or overreact in a way that can be very dangerous. But Putin knows that President Trump is in the background, and the unpredictability and the seriousness of President Trump and what he might do next is something that I think will deter Putin. But we should all be concerned that this is going to escalate to a place that we had always hoped that it never would go to in light of the recent attack by Ukraine. So we're watching it closely. I serve on the Senate Armed Services Committee, as you know. We're keeping a close eye on it, in touch with the White House, and making sure that we do everything we can to de-escalate rather than see this get out of hand even further.
Well, Senator Banks, your knowledge and dedication to the defense of the United States is one of the reasons this California considers you my shadow senator. Obviously, the revelation that the Ukrainians were able to infiltrate drones thousands of miles into Russia and launch this rather devastating attack on these high-value targets should highlight to people who haven't been paying attention, and to your credit, you are one of the guys who's been paying attention to the great risk we suffer in America's homeland. How do we change the mindset of Americans from fortress America to an America that's vulnerable to attack, both from outside through hypersonics and such, and through inside by infiltrators who, frankly, come across the border or on commercial cargo ships?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you think about I'm not worried about Russia attacking America's homeland. I'm worried about China attacking America's homeland. I'm worried about the open border for 4 years under Biden and those who flooded into our country, those who have now overstayed visas, like the terrorists in Boulder, Colorado. What came into our country over the last 4 years and how dangerous that is to America. I mean, you talk about the Ukraine attack. Hundreds of miles into Russia. I mean, we have Chinese ships parked and docked in American near America, close enough to America that you could see an attack like that carried out on the United States. This is why the Golden Dome that President Trump is serious about building in our country, and the type of security and deterrence that provides for our homeland is so important. Why I fully support it. Indiana is going to play a big role in building it for President Trump and for the country, so I'm proud of that as well. But this is why defense of the homeland matters more than I think it ever has before, certainly in my lifetime. Why we can't be complacent. We need to be vigilant and do what we have to do to secure our own country.
Well, Senator Jim Banks, you know what's going on. You know the threat. Do your colleagues understand it? I don't mean at a superficial level. Do they understand just how serious this asymmetrical threat to the United States, our infrastructure, our military, our people really is?
I hope so. You know, I'm brand new to the Senate, served 8 years in the House, and the whole time I was in the House, we were talking about the China threat. And I remember, you remember this too, Curry. You go back to 2017 when President Trump was first elected, and Mike Gallagher and myself, we were brand new in the House. Tom Cotton was in the Senate at that point for a couple of years. We were talking about the China threat. China is our biggest threat. President Trump was the first candidate for president and then president who named China as a threat to the United States of America, as our adversary, and actually did something about it. So 8 years ago, it was a threat that we had to, when we talked about it, we got laughed at, we got pushed back on. Wall Street at that point was selling us out. They still do largely sell out our jobs and the working men and women of this country to China, our biggest enemy. Today, the level of attention is there more than I think it ever has been before, thanks again to President Trump. But when I got to the Senate, I realized that a lot of those efforts in the House, the select committee on the Chinese Communist Party in the House, and that concentrated, even bipartisan effort in the House, it isn't as much there in the Senate. So I've tried to bring that same energy to combating the China threat to the Senate that we saw in the House, and with Senator Cotton and maybe a couple of others. We're trying to educate our colleagues that China remains the biggest threat that we face. And President Trump, what he's doing with the tariffs, in the reconciliation, the one big beautiful bill, the funding that's there to modernize our military, to keep up with the sophisticated technologies and emerging technologies where China is surpassing us, like on hypersonics and missile defense and some of those issues, that we need to invest more in the United States. Those are areas that I have to do a better job, and those of us who are focused on these issues have to do a better job to educate our colleagues about.
Well, Jim Banks, that's an important message. I hope your colleagues have heard it. We've got about 15 seconds. Is the Senate going to pass the big, beautiful bill before July 4th?
We have to, Kurt. I mean, if we don't, it'll be the biggest tax increase on the working men and women of this country that we've ever seen. We have a moral duty to pass that bill to make sure the taxes don't go up on factory workers and police officers. We'll go to work every day.
Thank you very much, Senator Jim Banks from the great state of Indiana, my personal shadow senator, the guy I wish was representing me in California.